Hi, this is Matt from Skybow. Do you like to use SharePoint as a database? Then have a look at the Skybow dossier. So we realized that this article, how to use SharePoint lists like a database, was one of our most visited blog posts on our website. And this tells us that a lot of people are really interested in how to store and create relational data in SharePoint. And I mean, SharePoint is a very powerful foundation for that, but it lacks when it comes to visual representation. Of course, you can make lookups between the different lists and so on, but yeah, that's it basically. And that's where the Skybow dossier comes into the game, and we will cover a couple of things. First, the master detail relation. So in other tools like InfoPath or even in Intex, there used to be something called the repeating sections or repeating table, depending on what you've added. And that's the main concept actually of the Skybow dossier, that we have a main list and some sub lists and libraries which are connected, and we can nicely represent them different ways. I will show you later on. And the second one, which was used from some customers, are the document sets. Document sets were used to, it's like a folder where you can upload documents, and the folder itself has some metadata which gets automatically inherited to all the documents. And that's also a use case what we will cover with the Skybow dossier. Just instead of using a document set and this folder, which is kind of limited as well when it comes to the visual representation and other things, we do that with lists and libraries directly. So let's have a first look at the architecture. Like I said, we have always a dossier consists of like two levels. You have the first level, the main list. In our case, it's the expense request. And then you can have multiple sublists and libraries. In my case, a receipt document library and an activity list. Those are referenced with the main list using a lookup in the sublist. So for example, here, lookup to expense request, and here as well. So this is where you connect this list with the main list. Especially for the document libraries, there is a specific way how we structure the files, and we create a folder for it, which is also having a lookup. So the folder has the lookup, and this folder is automatically generated with an initial file name or folder name, and afterwards you could rename it. For example, if you have synced the library using OneDrive, you can rename those folders. The most important thing is to look up that this is set correctly. And the folder is used because files can only have the same name once. And if you have files for one expense request and for another one, that would overwrite the one from the other expense request. That's why we create a folder. So in each folder, you can have, again, the same names. Another thing, what we can do is what I just mentioned before, this metadata inheritance. So any data that is on the main item, we can inherit automatically down to the sub item. Sublists or libraries, doesn't matter. Sometimes that's useful if you want to have a look at the receipts, all the receipts, and you want to know, just give me all the receipts with status in draft, for example. That would not be possible if you just have the status set on the request itself. So by inheriting it down to the sub library, we do have the value down there, and it's automatically maintained. If you change the value on the top, it automatically gets inherited down to all the sub items. And we also support the other way around. So let's assume you want to sum up something on the main item. You want to count, you want to have a min or a max from a number or a date, or the average for the sub items. Then we have a functionality called aggregation. And this will sum up or aggregate values from a sub item, in this case the cost. So we have a cost and it's automatically aggregated. So it aggregates all the costs from the receipts up to the request. So we always have an up-to-date sum. All right, that's the basic architecture. Those are the use cases that we can do. And maybe some of you know that we can do that on the form directly, so these aggregation and metadata inheritance things, but we can also do that in the server side. So when to use what? So actually it depends on your case, because if you do that client side, like in the screenshot here, you want to see the sum or the total of this sub list here. If you need the immediate results, you want to see the sum automatically, then you can do that in the form directly using a sum function right within the form. Or you need to have a value to proceed. So if you need it in a process to say, okay, if the total amount exceeds a number, I don't know, 5,000, then the process needs to go another way. That's also when you need it client side, for example. Or you want to open up the edit or the display form right after you've created the item. You need to have it client side. The only thing you have to think about is it will run in the user context. So that's especially important if you do things which needs higher privileges, where a normal user is not able to do. Whereas the server side is like more reliable. I mean more reliable because not for the calculation itself, but let's assume you upload a document via drag and drop, or you change something, I don't know, maybe in a datasheet view where you don't have a form and you still want these things to be calculated. If you do the client side just in a form itself, then this will not be calculated. So it will just be calculated if you do it server side. The downside of the server side is that it will take some seconds. There is a little delay for the calculation. It will take some seconds. That's why I said if you want to proceed with the value, it will not work because it will take some time. But on the other side, it will run with higher privileges. So if you want to do something with permissions, for example, you can do that in the backend. Or you need to calculate something on a list where a normal user will not have access to, you can do that with the background functionality or the server-side functionality. As a pro tip from my side, in a lot of cases, I do both. I do a combination of both. So I do it in the form already, and I still do it in the background using our background calculation feature. Of course, it will run twice, but you have like the benefits. You benefit from both things. You can see it in the form directly. You can open it, and it would still be calculated in the background. If, like I said, you do something outside of the form, it would still be calculated. Also, if you go into the sublist, directly make some changes, the server side will always take care about those changes. That's why I normally do it in both, so in the background and in the form. So that really depends. If you just need it in the form, if you don't need it in the form, then of course just do it in the background. Last but not least, some UI, UX best practices. So to structure a dossier, you can use tabs, but you can also use our collapsible sections, what we see here or down here. So, so if you have a large form or complex form with a lot of fields, it's very helpful to structure it using multi-column layout, but also tabs and collapsible sections. What also helps for a user is that you display the count of sub-items. So especially for tabs or collapsed sections, you see, okay, if there's 0, I don't have to click on it because it's just 0. Or you can make stuff like this. So I will show you that one in the demo afterwards. So you could even say, I have 2 receipts and the total is 80. So as the tab name. So yeah, you already know before you click, there is something. And that's for the usability quite helpful. That's something if you have a sub list and you rely on some columns or some columns to be displayed because you use them in a calculation, make a separate view, make that view hidden, and choose that view for the sublibrary. Because this way, no one will be able to change that view that your solution or your functionality will stop working. I will also show you that one real quick. And in some cases, if you have buttons, especially actions on the sub lists and libraries, which are not the default ones, like the new, the edit, and so on, you add additional ones, then normally these sub list actions, they don't know about the main item and these the values from the main item. So you can use a window variable to pass these values in the background. I will also show you that how that will work. Then I got the question from time to time, can I do a multi-level dossier? So because we always have main and sublists. And yes, you can. You can take a sublist or sublibrary and make it a main list for another dossier. It's just another dossier. We don't have 3 levels that you see 3 levels right within Studio, Skybow Studio, but you can use a sublist and make it to another main list to have these multi-level functionality. And one, let's say, thing that I see from time to time is that if you want to get the folder in the sublibrary, let's say you want to generate a document and automatically store it in the folder, make sure to get that folder not via its name, because this can change. Use the lookup, which is set on the folder. As we can see here, you have to switch in the, you can retrieve using a camel. You can retrieve documents and folders. By default, it's just documents. So you switch to documents and folder, and then take the lookup field, which is set on the folder, as we saw in the architecture, and use the ID, because this way you always get the exact folder. Doesn't matter if it has been renamed or not. And as the view field, simply take the name and then insert it into like get first value for query, for example. Then you get the name of the folder, and this it's bulletproof. Even if you rename something, you always get the right folder. One note before we go into the demo: if you create a dossier, the wizard to create a dossier will overwrite the display form of your main list. That's the only thing what will be changed. If you already have the display form customized before, don't worry. If you see the display form is changed with the tabs, just go back in the version, because it just creates a new version. You can go back in the form editor history that you get back your old form. So sometimes people are confused after running through the dossier wizard. They choose a list with an customized display form, and this is all written, and they think, oh, I lost everything. No problem, there's a version, you can go back. All right, let's have a quick look on how this works. And therefore, I will use my expense demo. As a first thing, I want to show you the metadata inheritance, which is, in my case, I have the status interface, which I inherit down to the documents. And the only thing you have to take care is the type of field needs to be the same. So if you want to inherit a number field, you have to add a number field in the sublist. If you want to inherit the date field, it has to be a date field. In my case, if we look at the receipts, I do have these two fields. It's the status and the face. And because the main fields up here, they are a choice field. I created those two fields in the sublist, and it gets automatically inherited. So if I would change the state up here by pressing submit, for example, it would automatically inherit those values down to the receipts. Oh, it's all a bit small. Let me see. Zoom out a little bit. So these values are automatically updated in the background. Because it's server-side, it will take a couple of seconds to do that. And the only thing we have to do is we have to configure it on the column. I will show you just in a second. The other thing is the aggregation. And the aggregation is these totals here. So we have two different totals. We have a complete total of everything. So these two, it's this total cost. It's the sum. And then there is one more. In my scenario, it's interesting to see how much was paid by the employee. Because if it has been paid by the credit card of the company, it's not something that I have to pay out to the employee. So it will be less. And that's what we have down here. It's one flag paid by employee. That's this one. And I only count the ones which are not paid by employee. That was paid by the credit card, I mean. That was paid by the employee itself. So if we have a look in the background, and we see my dossier, these two levels, main level expenses, sub-levels activities and receipt. So first we saw the metadata inheritance. That's on the sub list. So you define here, you add a column. You can add a column to this sub library. It needs to be the same type, like I said. And as you can see already, some of them are bold, and those are the ones which have a configuration. So these two, face and status, it's a choice field. And if I click edit, we will see it's the same choice field I've added here as well, same values. And up here we have this background calculation tab. If I click on that one, it's super simple. We can choose inherit. We choose the list, and here you will see all the lists that are having a lookup. So all the lookup lists you have on this list. As well, for example, cost center is another lookup. That's why I could theoretically also inherit values from the cost center. But here I'm taking the main list, and this drop down will only show you the fields with the same type. So I simply choose a status. That's it. That's the only thing I have to do. I click save and it already starts to inherit this metadata. The exact same was done here. Now the other way around, if we aggregate, if we go up to the expenses, we do the same, we go to the things in the background. And here, in most cases, we also see some fields which are bold. And here it's a bit different from, I mean, the field just needs to be the field you want to set. So in the case of total, I added the currency field. And again, we click on the field, normal SharePoint field, and we have this background calculation. This time, because we are on a main list and we do have sublists, we see some additional things popping up. The total, the count, the min, max, average, these things, those are the aggregation functions. I just choose total. Then you choose from these two sublists or libraries, you can choose which one. In my case, it's all stored on the receipts. And then I can choose which column to sum up. And I choose the total cost. That's the only thing I have to do. Now, every time you add a receipt, you delete the receipt, you change it, this column will automatically be recalculated in the background. So, and then main difference to this one, it looks exactly the same. The only thing is, on that configuration, we have an optional filter. Because I don't want to sum up all of them, I have an optional filter, and this filter only gives me the paid by credit card is equal to no. So only give me those which are not paid by credit card. And from those, we're gonna do the total, so the sum. And that's the only difference. So even if you change the pay by credit card and a sub item from yes to no, this is recalculated automatically. So that's super simple to configure, and it's reliable, like I said, even if you do something in the list directly and not going through the form. Whereas on the other hand, when you do it on the form, like here on the edit form, and you want to see the total showing up, come on. It's a bit different, but it's also quite simple. Come on. I have my two fields here, and as soon as you have a sublist or sublibrary, you can go to the field in the calculation part here with the expression. It's calculated, as you can see. And because we have a sublist added, we will see them here. You choose which field you want to sum, and let's say the total cost. And here you also have these aggregation function. So you simply double click on the sum and that's it. That's my calculation. It would automatically calculate it automatically. Client side in the form. That's the difference. Now if we have a look at the how you can display these counts. As most of you probably know, you can, it's similar here. It's also just, if you double click, for example, the section title, we do have the section display name. It's expression enabled. That's why you can use as well the sublist token here. So here we count the activities. That's another sublist. And I can take any field which is set and just, doesn't matter, say count. Now, up here, I did something a bit more extended, more complex, but still quite simple. I had the number of receipts first, and as you see, it's just a text. So I return the number of items and say space receipts, so like 2 receipts, and then in the bracket, and that's what I wanted to show you. That's a little tip. Everywhere where you can add expressions, especially if you do a text expression, you can add this placeholder with the double brackets. If the first sign or character here is an equal, then it's like an assignment expression inside of a placeholder. So it's like a placeholder which is evaluated as assignment. So here now I can write anything you want. You can calculate, you can code JavaScript. This time it's JavaScript. So what I'm doing, I'm counting the sum. And because SharePoint will return like, I don't know, 80.7 is returned as 80.7, but I want to have 80.70 because it's a currency. So I simply add this to fixed so that I always have 2 decimals. That's JavaScript. But I can do that within a text expression, and yeah, I can call anything. I use the sum. If the sum is null, that's JavaScript, then it takes the 0, and it also gives me the 2 decimals. And then a space and a euro and a closing bracket. So that's text only. That's what I did here. And that's how it will look like. 2 receipts, 80 euro. So you can calculate actually anything and make the UI even easier to understand and giving it more infos. Last but not least, like I said, if you want to pass, because let me show you. If you have a sub list or library, doesn't matter. In the settings of this list, if you scroll down to the command bar, we will see some of the actions here. Those are the default ones. You cannot change the action itself, but you can hide it and so on. But you can add additional actions. So those are the list actions from the sub list. Those list actions are on the receipts in my case. And the thing is, if you configure those actions and you go into the configuration of the actions, we will see that in the expression builder, I do have the context, I have the context of the receipts, but not of the expense. So like this, I don't have an access to, I do have the access to the main item, the values from the main item through the lookup. But if you're on a new form and it's not yet set, or maybe some other scenarios where you don't have just a lookup, then what you can do is you can add a window variable, and this has to be added on form load. So we are on the main list, and on form load here, I'm using, doesn't matter, yeah, I'm always using after form load. And then I'm using an execute script action. And the only thing I'm doing is I define a window dot and then any name for the variable. And as well, you can set anything. If it's just a number, a text, an object, an array, doesn't matter. You can set it. And later on in the sub list or the sub form, you can easily access this window variable. As long as you're in the same window and you're not reloading the page, this window variable stays. And this way I can always, for example, set the ID, or if you need other information, just add it to a variable as well. And then in the sub items, everywhere where you have expressions, you can access those with the window dot and then the name of the variable. This way you can pass values to sub actions and sub forms. Now you should be able to get most out of the skybow dossier and being able to build up relational data inside of SharePoint. If you like that content, give me a like and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.